Hanging with Higgins, where author and former prosecutor John J. Higgins interviews his intriguing guests about their lives, knowledge, experiences, and projects. Explore, learn, and be entertained. Come, join us now. Good evening, and welcome to Hanging with Higgins. I'm your host, John J. Higgins. Tonight, I'm going to continue the conversation I've had with Ron Greenfield, who was a guest on my show last week. He has a most varied and extensive behind-the-scenes career that I have ever encountered. He's a great guy to talk to, and we were just kind of running long, so I thought it would be best to do a second show with Ron. He's the author of a book, Perspectives on Entertainment, and he has a very informative and interesting website where he has a series of articles and blogs, actually, and it's called Aspects of Entertainment, and it's located at www.aspectsoфentertainment.com. And I'm sure you will find him as interesting as I do. To give just a brief recap of where we had been at the end of last week's show, Ron had talked about his early days in the entertainment business and how he got into it, and various jobs he had where he started as a graphic designer, did movie trailers, wound up in California, where he was at the heartbeat of what was going on at the time in terms of rental videos, the whole video cassette industry, and we kind of left off and made it a little bit too short, I believe, when he was still at Spelling Entertainment. So we're going to start about there, Ron, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
You're at Spelling, and you're working with major talents.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell me how you had explained how nice Aaron Spelling was and whatever, but maybe for the audience you could give them a little bit more of a sense of what actors and actresses that you were dealing with at the time?
Oh, yeah. At my previous studio, I had worked with Brad Pitt and people like, George Clooney. Now, you have to understand, these were before they were very famous. But also, when I was at Spelling, Mr. Spelling was very emphatic that when you dealt with talent, all your I's were dotted and all your T's were crossed. I mean, he was a stickler for, how you treated talent. It also enabled me to work with some of the foremost film directors of the last 50 years, like people like Martin Scorsese and the late Sidney Lumet. And with Martin Scorsese, one of his project, I don't know if the best way to say project, was film restoration. So I worked with him. He had identified 4 films in the Spelling catalog that he thought were that should be restored.
Could you explain a little bit about that too? Because I've always been really fascinated with the whole idea of preserving those films. I mean, they were shot on stuff, I guess, the celluloid or whatever decomposes over time.
Exactly. I mean, if you think about it, if you go back to the early days of film, that was filmed on nitrate film, which does not have a long shelf life. So that's why many of the silent classics we no longer have. And, in the beginning, nobody saw film or the film industry as art. It wasn't held on to. It was only starting around the 50s that people, just an inkling, we should preserve this. I mean, if you think about My Fair Lady, which was made in 1964, it was only like 30 years afterwards that it had to be restored because the film started to decompose and it was getting lost.
Wow.
So he's a great proponent of preserving the heritage of film as an art form. And he's incorporated George Lucas, Steven Spielberg in that effort. And so he's really been at the forefront. And there were 4 films in the Spelling catalog that he thought these should definitely be preserved. Now everything is digital. So, that's no longer a problem where you would worry about it decomposing. But
Right.
before 1990, that wasn't the case. So,
I know I'm like a James Bond aficionado, and I know when they restored all the Bond films. I mean, when I saw Doctor No again, it was like it had just been made.
exactly.
I mean, that's what a great job they had been able to do with that. Do you recall what movies that were in the spelling catalog that he did?
The two I can remember right off the top of my head. One was A Double Life with Ronald Colman and Shelley Winters, and the other was Pursued with Robert Mitchum and Teresa Wright. There were two more, and right off the top of my head, I cannot think of them right now.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's okay. No, I that was kind of a trick question, real quick. So
there were four films altogether, but those were the two I remember.
Right.
And and he was very nice. A real gentleman. Loves film. I mean, Marty talks real fast like this. That's one thing that always attracts me to whoever I work with. Their passion for what they do.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to work with somebody, we'll get it done today and maybe tomorrow. No. You want somebody who they give it 120%. That's Marty.
Particularly when you do,
Yeah. Because it drags everybody else down.
Yes. Yeah. But, before we move on from there, because it was something that we kind of skipped over earlier, which really interested me because I loved Humphrey Bogart movies. Mm-hmm. You were involved with both Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon at some point?
Right. That's back at CBS Fox. And I did a classic promotion for those two movies. Sort of did a retrospective on him, so we updated the posters and the packaging to make it more contemporary, but still kept the flavor of the original film. So, and those were in the CBS Fox vault or library, and so those were very popular because there are a lot of Bogey fans, and maybe now with the recent passing of Lauren Bacall,
there'll be another resurgence in that. Yeah. I mean, what was her classic line? You know how to whistle, Steve?
You know how to whistle, Steve. Just pull it together and blow.
Right. Just cool stuff.
Right, very cool stuff.
So we'll go back to the spelling thing. You had Scorsese was coming in to help do some of the restorations and whatever, and then so take it from there.
And then one of the high points for me was Spelling produced a film called Night Falls on Manhattan that was directed by Sidney Lumet. Now, Sidney Lumet is probably one of the foremost film directors of the last 50, 60 years in American filmmaking. And I had the occasion to work with him and to prepare a lot of the marketing materials, but also to record him for the release of Night Falls on Manhattan when it would go into, when it was released on, not Laserdisc, on DVD.
Okay.
So I flew to New York, set up the recording session. Very gracious, terrific guy. And I've often said this, being in the studio that day with Sidney Lumet was like being in a master's class for direction. It was just amazing. You know what? I wish I had somebody had taken me that day because he was just phenomenal. And just briefly for your audience, just to tell you, one of the things, Sidney had the greatest respect for actors. And he would rehearse them. You know, it wasn't like, here, we're going to set, you know, you'll do one or two or three, you'll do your takes. He usually got it in one or two takes because everybody had been rehearsed. And one of the things he said was, and this is, since that day, I always look at it this way. He said, on film, the reason why film is considered a director's medium is you don't need pages and pages of dialogue. You could say more with a look, the delivery of a line, or a camera angle than 10 pages or 5 or 6 pages of dialogue.
Yes.
It's interesting because at the first break, he was really great, and there was something else I had wanted him to say. And so we came out for a break, and we're schmoozing and talking, and he looks at me and he says, Ron, are you getting everything you need? Now here I'm thinking, oh God, how am I going to give Sidney Lumet direction? You know what I mean?
Right, of
You
course.
know, and he could see I was hedging. He said, "No, Ron, I really want you to tell me, what do you need? If necessary, we can go back and record it." So I said, "Okay." So I told him what it was I was looking for. He said, "No problem." And then the rest of the day went without a hitch. It was just terrific. In the
Uh-huh.
film, there was I wouldn't say unknown, but he played a supporting but very pivotal role in the film. And if you've seen the film or you will see the film, a lot of the action surrounds him. And Sidney loved this guy. He just thought he was such a wonderful actor, very honest. The actor happened to be James Gandolfini, about a
Uh-huh.
year before The Sopranos. And during the whole commentary, more so than the star of the picture, he would point out James Gandolfini and say, "Look at that expression. Look at that look. It's honest." And
Uh-huh.
he did it throughout the whole session that day. He was just so taken by the talent of Gandolfini. So it comes as no surprise that a year later, there's The Sopranos on HBO. And so we all know what came after that.
Yes.
You know, so we
Yes.
know that.
Well, it's definitely a classic, that's for sure.
So,
I mean, it actually turns out he went to college at Rutgers around the same time I was there, but I never bumped into him. But yeah, that's the way it goes.
I mean, James Gandolfini didn't come out of nowhere, but he was not considered mainstream star at that point. After that, he did The Sopranos, and then he was like top of the hill.
Yep. Oh yeah. No.
And it was unfortunate because Belling was getting more projects like that, and then, as is the nature of Hollywood, with a lot of conglomerates and things like that, there was a merger because both Spelling and Paramount were owned by Paramount. Spelling and Paramount were owned by Blockbuster. Blockbuster is merging with Viacom. So
Oh,
Spelling was
right.
folded into Paramount because of all the duplication of jobs and because Paramount is the bigger entity. So that
Right.
was sort of the demise of Spelling Entertainment, which is unfortunate because it was a great organization to work with.
Right.
And
Right. Well, go ahead.
go ahead, John.
No, I said, well, that kind of what happens
Yeah,
when everything gets swallowed up. Sometimes you lose a lot in the mergers.
yeah, you do. And the budgets of the films were going up. Uh, there was a lot more happening, but it was a case of finances and mergers, and it was not a happy time. It was a hard time.
Right. Well, there was another thing I thought that, would be good if you explained a little bit because, if you've been on a movie set, you kind of have a sense of how that all happens. But for most people, they really have no clue. The last couple of years, I've had NBC Universal has rented the end part of my mother's property, which goes into a river down here to film, like fill in spots for some TV shows they were doing. And, when you see how that all works, people are standing around doing different jobs. It's not like everything is set up. And I know I did some TV commercials myself. The thing that always seemed to take the longest period of time to me was getting the lighting right.
Right.
So
Very
maybe you could explain a little bit what happens on how a movie is really made.
right. Most people, and it's not something. It's not conscious to them. Like just this past weekend with the Emmy Awards and the big awards like the Golden Globes or the Oscars or the Tonys or the Grammys. And basically, you see these people arrive in their limos, in designer duds. They're prepared by their publicists, a small army of uh, dressers, makeup people, hairstylists, whatever, and they're walking the red carpet. That, it's what I always said. The glitz, glamour, and red carpets is about 1/2 of 1% of really what goes on in this industry.
Uh-huh.
But how many people really think about all the armies, the legions of people it takes to get that project from its inception to your theaters, to your console, on TV, onto a DVD, on a stage. Do people really have an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes? The lawyers, the publicists, the agents, all the negotiations of the contracts, there are just armies of people to get this all done. You're on a film set. You have gaffers and electricians and prop people and camera operators and drivers and crews and catering. This is what it takes all to have the magic happen. If you're shooting and you're shooting, okay, let's say you're shooting in Manhattan, all right? And you have a shot down at the Battery, and then you have to another shot up by Central Park. Well, how do you get there? You need the drivers to bring all the equipment. If you're shooting in an apartment on Upper Fifth Avenue, who's going to carry that up all those flight of stairs, besides the elevators? You need the electricians to make sure you have the generators. You have to make sure your lenses are all right. I mean, there's so much that goes on. It can be on a film set. It can be on a TV set. It can be anywhere.
And all of that costs a lot of money per minute when you think about it. And so often, that's why the shooting days can be so long.
Exactly.
Because they've got the equipment, they've got the people there to do that again, to reassemble it is, really cost prohibitive.
Okay, now here's another example, because my brother belongs to the Directors Guild. He's a first AD. What if you're shooting and do you think about this? If you're shooting a scene at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's 15 degrees outside, it's freezing, you're near a body of water, but you gotta have that shot before the sun comes up, or else you're screwed.
Absolutely.
Right? What if you're sitting in a Broadway show, all right, and you're watching it, and gee, isn't this wonderful, and I love this actress, or I love this singer? What about the people in the pit? What about the backstage crew who's making it all happen without a hitch? What about all the arrangers, choreographers, dancers, composers, arrangers, scenery people, lighting people? That all goes in, but you don't think about that when you're actually watching the presentation.
I had seen, it might have been on HBO or something, there was a special or something. I think that the casting directors are looking to get some kind of Oscar for their own work. And, at first you don't think much about it, but, I did some anti-drug commercials, and I actually filmed them with some kids with undercover state police, and I remember picking which kids I was going to film, and it was really the strangest experience to me, because I really didn't care about the personality as much. It really mattered on how they looked. And when you think about when you're casting a role of what actor fits in that role, I mean, that has to take an awful lot of thought.
Oh, it does. And, I would say with casting, I've sat in on some casting sessions. And it's very tough because I have a lot of friends who are actors. And sometimes it's a very cold reading, like you only get your lines maybe an hour or so before, or sometimes you're handed the lines right there at the audition. But it's also what you project as the person inhabiting the character, and you have to get that across in a few lines. Or you have to get that across as if you're auditioning and singing. It's an instant thing, and especially in television, you don't have a lot of time, because a schedule is done like on a weekly basis. So, you have to really get it out there right away. You don't have the luxury of a film set.
Right.
But I would just like people to at least have a notion that all this is behind the scenes to make it happen. It's not just like, oh, yeah, gee, that's really nice. Thank you very much. It's not like that at all.
Right. It's just not the actor who shows up someplace and they point a camera at them and the thing happens.
And then you have the makeup people and the dresses and the costume designers. And then you have to make sure the sweat is not showing, because those lights are hot.
Oh, yes.
And then there's a whole technique to film acting as opposed to stage acting. I can go on and on, Don, and if we had 6 hours, I'd go more detail.
Right.
But
All right, well, I kind of interrupted you with the spelling stuff again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. But really, this is what you have, I just want people to have an appreciation for what I call the creative unsung heroes that make it happen. All right. And it's not to say a very famous actress or actor don't, but that's why you hear when anybody is winning their Oscar, what a great crew I have, and they are very grateful for that crew.
Absolutely.
They can show up on another set, and if you spite them, they'll come back and bite you in the butt.
Well, what's the saying? You should be nice to everybody on your way up because you have to be nice to them on the way down.
And there's also another thing is, and it's so true, is anytime somebody's head gets swelled, and something along the lines is once you start believing your own publicity, that's the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Oh, that's true.
So anyway, yeah. So those were like in the final days of spelling, but I'm glad you asked that because I really do want people to appreciate really what goes on to get it all done.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll just give you a funny story. When they were filming the last time the NBC Universal people were here, they were trying to shoot a summer scene, but we had 3 feet of snow on the ground in the fields. Yeah. And my brother plowing out the area to try to make it work.
Right.
And, they were here till 5 or 6 in the morning. They finally decided to change the whole script to make it in the winter because I don't know how else you were going to do it. But, those poor people were stuck standing out there in the cold. Luckily at my mom's house, I could give them, bathrooms and a place to warm up. But, that is a very grueling job.
Right. And also, too, the people who run the set, like the first AD or the first assistant director, there are all these rules and regulations they have to know. Like if you have a child actor, they can only be on that set for so long.
Right.
You have the agreements between other trade unions. Okay, like if you have to fix a light, the capper can't touch it until the electrician does his thing.
Right.
If you break for lunch, then, or if you go into overtime, there are all these different rules and regulations that they have to know about. So it's not like click, click, the camera's going. It's a very involved process.
Yes. But like I say, I've always found that fascinating, because that's how the magic really appears up on the screen somewhere.
Right. I mean, if you were sitting at a Broadway show and all of a sudden something happened, with what you pay for a Broadway show these days, you'd be very pissed. If something didn't sound right or the scenery didn't fly in right.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, you'd be if you're paying $150, $175 for that seat, you'd be major pissed.
Yes, absolutely. So there's I guess spelling is folded into Paramount.
Yeah.
And now you find yourself recreating yourself once again.
Mm-hmm. Now this was like, basically, if you think about it, I came from the theater into film, into home entertainment, back into film, back into TV. So by that time, it's all this hybrid of all this. Games was something so completely new to me. It was like, at first it was a little difficult for me to wrap my head around it. Because these are not film people or not theater people, not, quote, traditional entertainment people. This was already, they were much younger, and you're basically coming out of now, they're more of now the digital age, the internet, and things like that. So I had to really, it was like a major learning curve for me. And also, for the most part, games have gotten a bad vibe because of the violence. All right. It is also what I came to, and it took me a while, I'm being honest with you, to appreciate the talent, the creativity that goes into it.
Right.
It's not, people say, oh, you're holding the joystick and you're playing on your console, and you have to kill this guy to get to the next level. Well, it's a lot more than that. Yes, I will grant, uh, yes, games have been very violent, but at the same time, there are other aspects to it that people are not aware of. And like on a film set, uh, all the creative talent that goes into it. I mean, the people who do the coding, the people who model the avatars, uh, everything that goes in, the technology to advance it, to make it at a higher level. And just like the
Uh-huh.
home entertainment and film, it's gone through its evolution.
Right.
So, it took me a while, I'll be honest, but I came to have an appreciation for the talent and the artistic endeavors of a lot of people who are in the game industry. I mean, and that really has grown. And I think it really has tried to monitor itself as far as the violence goes.
Right.
And it's also interesting too because there are obviously, it's no mistake that every studio has its own interactive or gaming division, whether it be for console, whether it be online, whether it be for mobile. Um, as well as you have the major publishers like Electronic Arts, Activision, Midway, DreamWorks, Ubisoft, LucasArts. I mean, I can just go on. Atari.
Right.
All right.
Right.
What they try to do, and again, you can actually go back to the home entertainment days, is they take the property, the game, okay, how do we leverage it across as many platforms as we can? So it's not just a game anymore that you're playing on your Xbox or on your PlayStation or on a mobile device or on your iPad.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
who do we partner with? Where can we take it to? So in a way, the game book that I wrote all those years ago is now in play again, but on a different platform.
And you're adapting it. A friend of mine and I have developed this thing called the Kangaroo Crew. We have these. It's a computer program with books that went along with it. That was the first version or whatever to help kids learn to read or whatever. And I know the frustration sometimes with dealing with the graphics and the art in there. It's not like you can reach your hand in the screen and move something. It all has to be done by code.
Right.
And most recently, we've been working on a mobile app to do the alphabet. Teach the alphabet, because when we first started, there wasn't such a thing as touchscreen. So a 3-year-old really could never manipulate a mouse, but now they can point and poke and whatever. And the app, oh my God, Ron, it took like 18 months because we had to find somebody who could do HTML5. And, anybody who could do HTML5, they were all self-taught. So if they were really good at it, you couldn't get near them,
Oh, I know. And
so.
Yeah, and the same applies to if you're producing a film, you're producing a musical, you're producing a TV show, whatever it is. Do you know the mountain, or let's say the armies of people sitting at the computers, each working on a section of a game, and to make sure it's seamless, so that every part matches up. If you're going from level 3 to level 4, that it's all working together, that the artificial intelligence is there, the rendering of the avatars is there, the background. It all has to match. That takes an incredible amount of work and concentration.
And then on top of it, you got to coordinate voice, right? You got to coordinate music. You got to coordinate sound effects.
And, it's also interesting, too, because I was working on a game that I wanted to produce that was very promotional, where I would bring in partners, let's say like a beverage company or a computer company or a guitar company.
Uh-huh.
And the technology is such that if you had multiple partners, and this was an online game where, they would pay an X amount of dollars. And so their time in the game, since it was online, would be certain periods of the day, but it was pushed out to another product,
Oh, like advertising.
Yeah. So, people should realize too, whether it's a film, game, or whatever, if you see a symbol or a logo or a product in a film or a game or a TV show or a musical or whatever, it's not there by chance. It's there for a reason, because they probably paid very dearly for the advertising, and that even though you're not aware of it at first, it's there because they're advertising their product. I'll give you a very simple thing. If you ever watched American Idol, you're sitting there, the judges, they're watching who's ever there. The table are glasses, Coca-Cola glasses. It's not there by chance. It's there for a reason, because Coca-Cola paid very dearly for that.
Right. Well, I remember, I think one of the first movies, the Bond films I saw was Goldfinger, and they had all Fords in there, except for the Aston Martin.
Right.
And then it kind of dawns on you, well, Ford must have done something that they put their cars in.
Right. Or if you're watching a movie and they're at the airport and the plane takes off and it's American Airlines, that's not by chance. It's they paid that it was an American Airlines plane.
Right. Well, and that also goes to the cost of doing all of this, is that, these are not cheap things to do.
No, they're not. Well, games, especially the console games, are up of $20 million to produce. That's not that's not chunk. That's a pretty hefty piece of change. And then you're attracting directors like John Woo, who's very famous for his action films. You're attracting big name talent because the return on the investment is phenomenal if your game is a hit.
Right. Well, what did Grand Theft Auto make $1 billion on the first day or something? I guess gross. I don't know if it made it, but
that's what I was thinking of. Grand Theft Auto, I think within the first few days made $1 billion, something like that.
Yeah, just mind-boggling. Now, of course, I was prosecuting car theft rings, so I wasn't so sure that I liked the whole idea. But, I mean, for kids playing, that kind of goes to the violence and all the other stuff. And I loved the one guy you interviewed in your book, and I'm sorry I don't recall the name, basically saying that, parents need to exert control over their kids in terms of what they're playing.
Yeah, that's Chris Melisinos.
Okay.
And Chris, I've known now for maybe 15 years. He's passionate about the industry, and not because of the violence, because of he started learning computers, like on the Commodore and things like that. And he could see where it can go to as a learning tool, but also as a fun thing. And, you talk to a gamer, you get into a serious discussion with a gamer. I don't know if you ever have. And they're talking about levels and gameplay and what they can do. I mean, it's like, let's say if you were a film savant, it's the same thing, just apply it to games.
It's a whole other thing.
It is. It's very...
Actually, the guy that I have this radio show through indirectly, I had met at a paranormal kind of thing, because he also did ghost hunting and all of this other stuff. And he had a laptop actually that looked like it was going to take off. It was all lit with all kinds of lights in it and whatever. And I was going, what kind of computer is that? He goes, I'm a gamer. Right. And they have, the top-notch things and whatever. And I haven't played many games. I had to buy the From Russia with Love Bond thing only because Connery did the soundtrack on it, because I wanted to see, something I kind of grew up with, the Bond stuff. And And then I find out they have cheat books and whatever. And if you, maybe I'm too old for these things, but if you don't know how to move the right thing in the scenario, you're stuck.
Also, too, I'm not too familiar with it, but online, one of the biggest online games that have ever been is World of Warcraft. You can go on eBay and buy, I don't know if they're chips or whatever it is, but people buy these things, and there are whole followers who trade all this information. Like if you want to get to this level, or you want to attack this avatar, there's a whole nother world online as far as games go. It has to be about 10 years ago. There was a very popular simple game called Flo's Diner. I mean,
Okay.
that just people love. In the beginning with the games, one of the most, what do you call it? One of the most profitable games has been Tetris. I mean, now that's very basic, easy stuff. We're not talking with avatars and things like that. But the question is, why does it attract these people? What do they get out of it? To me, if it's a film or something, there's something in the game that appeals to them. It's a challenge. Also, you talk to gamers, these are these are not couch potatoes. These are very perceptive people. That you should not discount them. So to me, that was a whole new education as far as my career goes. I didn't see myself going there at all.
Right.
But then it also opened up a whole new world for me, especially as we became more internet savvy, where social media, where everything moved online. It helped me tremendously. And also working with the firm I was working with, Software Magic, I was the chief marketing officer by this time. So, we were going in and pitching concepts and ideas to the major players. I'm not talking about two guys sitting in the garage. I'm talking about some of the major players.
Right. Well, like to me, it seems like, it's probably going to be the next level in terms of entertainment. I think you had mentioned that too to me before. It's like as the things start merging together. Mm-hmm. I told my friend Lois, a number of years ago that, the internet and television were going to become one. And
that's happening.
Yeah. And I think that, with the avatars and now some 3D television kind of things, I mean, I don't know whether it was Kurt Vonnegut or Ray Bradbury, I forget who wrote, I think it was Fahrenheit 451, where it was like a full wall was just the screen. Mm-hmm. I mean, at some point it may be that they're all holograms.
It could be. It's really interesting, and this is what we spoke about before. In 2004 or 5, there was the release of a new Superman film that didn't do so well. I don't remember if it's Superman Returns or what. I can't remember. I don't even know what happened to the actor. As I watched that film, now we're talking almost 10 years ago, I'm looking at a lot of scenes, not just certain scenes. I'm saying, he doesn't look like a real person. He looks like a game avatar. To me, it was very obvious. And I started to think, we're going to start seeing more of this, because the generation who started to grow up in the digital age, this is what they know. This is what they have been exposed to. Like I was exposed to the theater and films, whatever. This is what their frame of reference is. So yes, I definitely agree. We're going to be seeing more of this. I just saw a movie a couple of weeks ago, Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought it was well done. I will also say the effects, by a half hour into the movie, I was a little OD'd on it. It was just like, it really attacked my senses. But I have to realize too, the people now who are moving up and making the films, not all of them, but for the most part, this is what they have as their frame of reference, as I had the old classics as my frame of reference.
Right. Actually, you're giving me a little bit of encouragement, because I don't know that you know that, but my novel series is about the archangels and angels and the war in heaven and all of those other things. And, this is more on my spiritual kind of side, was that, I had seen the name of my character on a movie poster, before I was even writing the books. But one of the problems people have talked to me about doing scripts and all the other thing is that, what needs to happen with that kind of characterization is that it probably needs to be extremely fancy CGI or something to make creatures of light. And when I saw Prometheus, what they were doing with that alien entity, I don't know if you saw that movie or not, it was really making it much more lifelike and real. And, if that keeps continuing, then that makes those kinds of things doable.
I would agree with you up to a point, John. The thing is, and I believe this firmly, at the end of the day, you can have all the effects you want. Like, oh, wow, that was great. People still connect with the content and the story.
Right.
You cannot have a relationship or be moved or have an emotion by an effect. You can go, wow, that's terrific. But to me, content will always be key. All right? Because if it's not there in the story, no amount of effects is going to make it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think you're still going to have humans do the voiceovers and that, because you need that kind of human emotion.
Oh, definitely.
And I think we briefly mentioned that with, because I love that movie with Robin Williams. It was called Robot or whatever.
Yeah.
He made that one robotic character hilarious.
Oh, Yes.
And so there's still a major, part for, the human actors and, breathing life into these things.
Yeah, there has to be an emotional connection with a character or a storyline that you can relate to.
Yes.
Because if you're just sitting there for 2 hours watching effects, you're going to feel like
you go to sleep.
Yeah, or the void. It's like, why am I watching?
Yes. No, that's very true. So now, are you still doing the gaming piece, or you've moved on? You've reinvented yourself once again.
Yeah, and what happened was, after the gaming, there was a period of time I was sick, and it took me a time to recoup. And I thought, okay, what's next? And a friend of mine who is a writer, and he's produced and directed some films, asked me to be the executive producer on a script he had. All right?
Okay.
It wasn't the greatest script, and I'll be very honest, but it was also a chance to be a producer. And that was like another thing I wanted to do.
Okay.
And now when you're in the independent film area, all right, and this I would say the film was budgeted around between $5 and $10 million, which is in today's market, that's like petty cash.
Right.
You sort of have to beat the bushes. You know what I mean? And
yes.
You really do. And
right.
It came to a point, all right, and starting to think about certain actors and actresses that we could attach to the two characters. And they weren't like major stars, but they had good credentials. I'll say that.
Okay.
At one point, he said, and then it was like, well, Ron, I don't think I should be doing this because I'm the director and the screenwriter. I think you should be doing that. All right, I don't think I should call this agent because I'm the director and the screenwriter. And I'm thinking, get the blowtorch out of your ass.
Right.
Because if you're entering into the independent market with film, all right, and you want to get it made, all right, leave your diva-esque personality at the door.
Right.
Leave it at the door, because this is what it's going to take to get this film shot and produced and in theaters.
Right.
And so we parted ways. So how I came to aspects of entertainment, I would say it's curious. One thing I love about being online, there's so much information out there. And I started to hear these things about experts, and if you've done this, you're an expert. And if you've had a life experience, you're an expert. So one day I'm just sitting and I'm sitting down, and I started like free consciously, or free association. Just everything I've done. I didn't do any editorial. Anything I've done, everything I've done, just put it down on paper. Don't editorialize. And I put it down. I just started writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And I said, holy shit, I know a lot of stuff. I really,
Obviously, yes.
I realized, but it's when you do that self-assessment, I said, I really know a lot of stuff. More so than a lot of people. And that was the genesis of Aspects of Entertainment. And the more I thought about it, the more I researched these kind of things, it started to form very quickly in my head. The other thing, and I this was something from when I started this, was I said, all my career, whether as a graphic designer, creative marketing executive, it was up to me to initiate a concept for somebody else's project.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? All right. With all my talent and all the resources available to me, it was me taking somebody's idea and getting it out there to make it profitable, to make it successful. I have no qualms about that. That was my choice. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I did.
Uh-huh.
When I started this venture, I said to myself, now it's my turn. I get to say what I want to say in my voice.
Uh-huh.
Like it? Great. If you don't, that's great too. You know what?
Right. You can't please everybody. That's absolutely true.
But I wanted to say it in my voice, in the way I see it. I also, because it wasn't there for me when I began, in the fact that this is what I've learned. You know what? I'm putting it out there. Think of it as my paying it forward.
Uh-huh.
This is what I learned. This is what I'm putting out there. All right? Feel free to take what you want. All right? I'm not doing an editorial here. People, they're astounded and I'm putting it out there. I said, it's there.
Right.
And
well, it's like mentoring. It's like mentoring the public in some ways.
Yes.
And
one of the things, when I started all this is, and whenever I speak to somebody, it could be a screenwriter, it could be a producer, because a lot of people have contacted me, it's what I call, what I call the 3 Ps. Is if I can't guarantee anybody's success out there.
Uh-huh.
But over the years, throughout the course of my career, I've noticed when you go into anything, it begins with your purpose, all right? If your purpose sucks, right, you're not going to do really good.
Right.
You're really not, because you have to be very clear about your purpose and what you want to do. Nobody gets anywhere, and I don't care whatever you do. I mean, I'm not talking entertainment at this point.
Right.
If you're not passionate about what you do, you're not going to give it your all. You really not. All right? You have to love what you do, the good times and the bad times. Nobody guarantees that it's all going to be good, whatever, champagne.
Well, pepper. If it was easy, anybody could do it.
Exactly. So
right.
You have to be passionate. Also, and I find this true, you have to be persistent. If somebody says no to you, what does no mean? It's no. All right. But it's not the end of the world. So you have to get a little bit more creative, think of it in a new way or from a new perspective, and just go forward. Also, that other person who says no or whatever the circumstance, they don't know you. They don't know what you're about. They don't know what your talents are. So my basic thing is, fuck you very much, and the horse you rode in on, I'm moving ahead. I'm sorry, John. Sometimes I come out with those words. But,
that's okay. Well, that's sometimes I really think that, a little bit raw humor sometimes is what really keeps us sane.
Right. So my feeling is, if it matters to you, then you move forward in any way you can. And let me tell you, sometimes it's really hard. I'm not saying it's like easy. Sometimes to pull that all together, move forward, it's hard. It really,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying it's easy, but if it
Right.
matters to you, you will find a way. And the last thing is, this is what we spoke about before. Gratitude is essential, all right? Because along the way, as I've had them, there will people who will reach out to you, extend their hand, show you the way to go, show you right from wrong. All right,
Right.
this is the way to do it. This is not the way to do it. And it's
Right.
not just like people in position of power. There are people, I'll tell you, and we got into this a little, and I know we want to get into some other things, John, is even with some of the vendors, if they go the distance for you, be grateful
Yes.
for them. And in
Yes.
my work, I've always been because of the bulk of, or the quantity of work, I've had a lot of vendors. The ones who will go to the mat for you, those are the ones to be grateful for.
Right.
It's not just people in power, it's the people you work with, the people you collaborate with. So
Yes. Very much
that's
so.
a very essential point to that. So,
Yeah. I consider that like partially, loyalty.
oh yeah,
You know, I mean, you have people who go the mile for you. That when there's something else that good comes along, those are the people you should be rewarding.
exactly.
And and not the people who aren't beneficial to you or don't go the extra mile when you need it.
And that's something too, and it's a whole nother topic, it's a whole nother show about politics in this industry, which I do not want to get into now.
Right.
Yeah, because there will be people who will trip you up. So the people that you work with, collaborate with, who go the distance for you. That's what.
Well, that was another theme I saw in the people that you interviewed in your book, was that was really very important, because they all looked like very nice people. They were all very successful, and they seemed all down to earth. And one of the things that seemed to be the common theme was the need to collaborate. It wasn't the ego in the way.
Right. Because I don't care what you do. You may be the initiator of the concept or whatever it is. You're not creating in a vacuum. You are
Correct.
creating, first of all, you're creating for an audience. You have to have whoever your audience is, you have to have that in mind. One of the purposes, and as I started to formulate aspects, the book was like a natural extension of it, and then another natural extension of that became the magazine version on the newsstand app. So, and now I'm thinking, okay, what's the next extension? But
well, I'll tell you what. Since you're saying those things, why don't you give us, because we've got about 6 or so minutes left. So I want to make sure that you get to talk about that a little bit so everybody understands what this project is that you're working on.
All right. Well, let me just say this. With Perspectives on Entertainment, all right, one of the things in the people who are in the book, all right, I just didn't want seasoned professionals. I wanted people at various stages in their career. Some are in school, some are just beginning, and some are seasoned, some are midway. If you think of anything in the book, or anyone, they're all driven by passion. They love what they do, whether it's Devon Jefferson, the songwriter, or Sidney Levine, the international distribution person, or and people were surprised by this. They said, "You have a section on entertainment law?" Yeah, duh. It's part of the industry, and it's a very essential part of the industry. People were very surprised by that.
Well, it's the architecture that you do everything underneath.
Right. And the good ones, the really good ones, they are there to protect the intellectual property of the artist or the company. So they are very essential in the industry. But I wanted people at various stages. This way, who's ever reading the book will have at least feel they have somebody they can relate to. All right. So you're not polished. I don't have 25 years in the business. I'm just starting out. This is the things I see. This way, I felt people could connect to it on that level. So that reason, when I started to formulate perspectives on entertainment, that was very central in my mind from the get-go. I wanted them to really get as big a picture of it as I could, as well as many parts to it as I could. Obviously, in a book, if I was to take every creative aspect of it, who's going to walk around with a 3,000-page iPad or a Kindle?
Right, exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. So why don't you explain your magazine a little bit, because I don't think I've seen your magazine piece.
All right. It's on the Newsstand app for iPad. It's not a Kindle. It's an iPad app, Newsstand. All right.
Okay.
It's what do you call it? It features articles. This is the second one I've done. It's just that partnering with Apple is not the easiest thing in the world. So it's not as easy as doing something for Kindle.
Oh, we know that from the app. It was easier to deal with the Android version.
Oh, yeah. They were not the easiest to partner with. However, it's a magazine where it comes in on the iPad, and this one features different aspects of the industry. I do have an article on gaming. I have an article on regional theater, because as Broadway budgets start escalating and out of hand, where is the next generation of talent going to go to learn their craft? It can't be on Broadway all the time. So regional theater, with monies they're getting, is really, I wouldn't say the new Broadway, but it's now the place where the graduates can go and learn their craft and hone their craft without the pressures of a Broadway production and the cost of a Broadway production. I have an interview with a gamer, and he says, this is why I love to game. I also, and this is a whole nother show, I have a discussion on something new, which is called transmedia. And it's not so popular in the United States as it is in Europe now and Latin America, which is different from cross media. And just briefly, what it is cross media is you take one product, let's say it's a TV show, and you can sell it on DVDs and Blu-ray, and maybe you develop a game. That's cross media. Transmedia is taking it, but doing it on other media, but also it's not just duplicating it on different platforms. You're adding different things that makes it way more interactive. And it's a whole other discussion. So, but that's just the beginning answer.
Well, I really would like you to give your website information again, because we're about 30 seconds out. So if you could do that, that would be wonderful.
Right. The website is www.aspectsofentertainment.com. I'm also giving a free ebook on the website on the homepage called A Sneak Peek Behind the Curtain of the Entertainment Industry. It is not a comprehensive book, but it gives people a beginning notion of just what goes on behind the scenes. All right. And then you can get my book, Perspectives on Entertainment. It's available at Amazon as well as the iBookstore. And then Aspects of Entertainment for the Newsstand app is available from iTunes.
Great, Ron. It was another wonderful hour with you. I couldn't have spent better time with anybody. I've really enjoyed the time. So I'm going to say goodnight. If you'd say goodnight, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and thank you, everybody. And please visit the website, get your free download. And this has been really a joy for me, John. Thank you so much.
Okay, good night.
Good night, John.
You can find more information about me and my book series, The Archangel Jeremiel and the War to Conquer Heaven, at www.john-j-higgins.com, and the website for this radio show, www.hangingwithhiggins.com. Thanks to our-truth.com for making this broadcast possible, and also look for the radio shows Hallowed Souls with Leah Simpson and The Cellar with Reverend Robin Marie on our-truth.com as well. Thank you and good night.